I bet you women would like to know what men are really thinking. The truth, the honest truth of what men are really thinking. Because I could tell you. Would you like to know? All right, I'll tell you. Nothing.
Hey everyone, this is Derek Plavin, and welcome back to episode 49. Now, if you're new to this channel, this is basically a free online jazz guitar course that unfolds in a logical sort of manner and keeps building upon itself, at least for now. So, if you really want to benefit, I would go back to the beginning and start at episode 1 and try to go in order as best as you can. I know that a lot of the videos are long, but what you could do is watch this video here today first since you clicked on it, and if you like it, go back and watch at least the first 3 or 4 episodes, and then you can take it from there. I'm also available for private lessons and have a lot of available PDFs to go along with lots of these videos on the channel that are available on my website and Patreon. So, as you can see, the topic of today's video is pretty clickbaity. Obviously, there isn't one single thing or collection of things that I'm definitively thinking about every single time I play. That would just be unrealistic as well as limiting to what I could do. So don't let anyone ever tell you there's a magic bullet when it comes to this kind of thing. In fact, I'd say a big part of your growth as a jazz musician comes from learning to mitigate the bombardment of thoughts that might enter your head at any given moment. But this definitely takes work.
Oh, it is hard goddamn work being this good.
Nevertheless, I will share some thoughts on this topic that you may find helpful, especially since I'm sure there's some people out there that would appreciate and love any answer at all to this mysterious question. But before I get into it, I just want to take a moment to introduce a new feature to this channel. I decided that it could be a cool idea to share some jazz recommendations with you guys from time to time, just to turn you on to some stuff that you may appreciate that you might not have heard before. These recommendations will likely not really have to do with the topic of the video that they're part of, and they'll just randomly come from time to time. So, for my first recommendation, maybe we'll call it Derek's Recommendations, or Rex Volume 1. How corny is that, right? But today I want to share this album with Kenny Burrell that also has Frank West on flute and sax, entitled Monday Stroll. I wanted to recommend this album because it also has Freddie Green on guitar in addition to Kenny Burrell. Most of us know Freddie Green from the Count Basie Big Band and the famous rhythmic drive and support that he provided. I found it nice to be able to hear Freddie on something like this, where he's in a smaller kind of an arrangement or combo, and he's often the only instrument really providing any harmonic support at all if you exclude the bass player. And you can really hear his incredible feel on this. This album obviously also has 2 guitars on it, which can be pretty uncommon for a jazz setting. And it's nice to hear it done well in a way where they aren't really getting in each other's way, even when Kenny Burrell is playing different chordal ideas at the same time as Freddie Green doing his different sort of rhythmic comping ideas. And above everything else, this album just swings hard. The album also features Eddie Jones on bass and Gus Johnson and Kenny Clark on drums. So I'll put a YouTube link in the description to this album if anyone wants to check it out, because it's really nice. Now, back to the main topic of this video. I'd like to begin by reiterating something that I already said in another recent video. I basically said that although I feel it's important to acquire and practice vocabulary, this doesn't mean that when I'm actually playing, I'm just thinking about all of these ideas and just trying to plug them into the music without listening and without an awareness of what's going on in the present moment and trying to musically adhere to it. It also doesn't mean that I'm never trying to work any new ideas into my playing either, but generally speaking, I'm really just trying to keep a clear head and let the music naturally come out of me without getting in my own way. So first of all, understand that when I say I'm trying to keep a clear head, this is just my own personal semantical labeling or description of what I may be experiencing. It's kind of like being in a meditative state. When you meditate, The idea isn't really so much to try to force yourself not to think. It's more so to just notice your thoughts without any attachment and being able to let them go. And eventually, hopefully, you can become more present to the moment with less thought. If I relate this to music, I kind of see it like in the moments where I feel as if the music that is coming out of me is really happening, my awareness is strongly focused on the present moment. This allows me to make better decisions for what I choose to play, because it guides me more towards being able to play something that actually serves the music in the moment. Essentially, my choices are being more so externally influenced by the music that's happening around me, more than being internally influenced by my own musical intellect. I think this is great because this mindset basically tells me what to do. If you keep your ears open and just listen, the music should naturally come to you without having to force it. I find this very interesting because if you study things like meditation or presence, they commonly say that one of the most common doorways into the present moment is through the five senses. By simply becoming aware of your senses in the moment, so I'm talking about your sight, your smell, your hearing, your taste, and your touch, your focus shifts more towards the present moment. So, what is music? To me, my general working definition is it's the art of sound organized in time. So, if we're talking about sound, we shift our focus by simply listening to what's happening around us in the moment. This is exactly why jazz musicians are always talking about the importance of listening. When you're not listening, you're either thinking intellectually about what you want to do musically in the moment, or you're just distracted with general thought and not allowing yourself to hear and play something that is truly appropriate for the moment. This applies to any jazz situation that you may be in, whether you're playing the melody or not, comping for someone or not, or taking a solo. Listening also involves listening to yourself. I'm bringing this up because if you pay attention to what you just played, you're more likely to play something next that relates to what you just played, as opposed to just jumping to some place familiar on the guitar and interrupting the cohesiveness. Now, having said all that, obviously I'm aware that this is a lot easier said than done, and you'll probably have some days where you feel like you get it and everything works, and then you'll have some other days where it's just not clicking, despite the fact that it may have been clicking on other days. This is why, in addition to thinking about it as if I'm trying to keep a clear head, I also like to think about it like I'm trying to stay as engaged with my musical spirit as I could be without any intrusive thoughts disrupting my musical flow in the moment. I see this as basically the same perspective as keeping a clear head, it's just kind of worded differently. But you can understand the connection like this. If you think about the genuine music that you have the potential to play that is also largely attached to your musical spirit as kind of like water that is flowing through you, it's basically about trying to keep your head open and clear so that you can allow this musical water to flow through you. If you're thinking too much about other things, you're more likely to block this flow, resulting in less than satisfying results, potentially. So this whole perspective or approach with the musical spirit, I happen to find very, pragmatic or practical when it comes to more consistently being able to yield satisfying results when I'm actually playing. I know I keep bringing this up over and over again, but if you haven't seen my 2 videos that I made that are specifically about the musical spirit, I would definitely check them out, especially if you're serious about trying to get better. Because I'm telling you, this stuff, although seemingly simple and basic, helped me progress so much when I feel like I finally understood it well. Of course, things aren't black and white or one or the other, but simply stated, in the moments where I feel like I'm playing to the best of my abilities, I'm usually mainly just playing whatever I'm hearing in my head. This is something that a lot of jazz musicians say, and you definitely don't want to take this for granted. Although you may agree and understand what I'm saying, I understand that this is still definitely not easy to do, or that everything will just improve instantly by just engaging the spirit. But regardless of this, I believe it could be extremely helpful to basically accept this reality of playing what you hear as soon as possible and start getting to work on improving your abilities to do just that now. It's about playing music that is initially felt within you, coming from a place that is separate of your instrument. Your instrument should really mainly just be used as an instrument to bring out that music. To demonstrate and support the importance of this, I'm gonna link a video in the description that you can check out. That is part 1 of an old jazz guitar instructional video that features the great Barney Kessel. He basically goes through different techniques and concepts that you could use to make you a better jazz improviser. And this is literally lesson 1 in that video, and this is what he talks about before anything else, which I think is good to keep in mind. He basically says the same thing that I do about playing what you hear, and the accompanying exercise that he demonstrates is just like one of the exercises that I demonstrated in one of those 2 videos that I have on the spirit. So check that clip out too and share your thoughts on that if you want. Now, although I largely agree with everything he says in this clip, there was one thing that he said that I may see a little differently. He said that if you can't really play what you hear or what you think, then you're reduced to only being able to play licks, formulas, devices, or patterns that would sound mechanical. So I already talked a ton about how I feel about this in other recent videos, but to me, I think it just depends really on the person who's playing and the place that the lick or whatever they play may be coming from. You can still play things that you can say for sure are coming out of things that you've practiced, whether it's the same exact thing note for note or closely related in some way where because you actually put in legitimate practice with the original idea, you were confidently and accurately able to actually express the musical idea that you played. Therefore, I don't think you should inevitably limit yourself to thinking that you shouldn't work on any deliberate vocabulary because it would be inferior in some way. When I say that it's all about the place that it's coming from, this is how I'm able to understand how pre-practiced licks and stuff like that can still come out in a genuine and sincere way in the moment. You see, if I practice a certain lick or even a whole solo transcription enough, not only am I working it into the hands, which if you've seen my videos, you know how important I think that is, but I'm also working it into my spirit, whether I'm singing along with it or not, because I'm consistently feeding this unique sound of whatever it is into my ears and inevitably getting me more and more familiar with it. So if we remember that we're trying to keep our head and ears open and try to just listen for something sincere to come out in the moment, why isn't it possible then that this lick or part of a transcription or whatever would just naturally come into my head, or just show up naturally, fitting into the musical spirit that's just flowing out of me? You understand what I'm saying? I hope that this makes sense. I want you to understand that I still think that you should be working on deliberate stuff in practice, but this is why people like Hal Galper say that there's a difference between a practicing mindset and a playing mindset, where he says that practicing is more goal-oriented and playing is process-oriented, unless of course you're practicing playing. And in addition to this, I still recognize that we're all humans and nobody's perfect, and of course, we'll all still have moments where we may play things that we might say are coming more from a place of more like egotistical intention or wanting to play something but not really even listening to what's happening around you or considering that. So I'm basically like a religious leader who's trying to guide you towards a better way, but I understand the human condition, and I guess, the more aware you become of, another approach or whatever, the easier it becomes. Now, this leads me to the final points that I want to make today. Like I said, it's all about developing an awareness of the present moment. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that you're never going to be using any of your intellect or musical skills and knowledge that you might have in the moment when you're actually playing. It's just that, ideally speaking, I think it should mainly only be utilized when needed and in response to something that you might become aware of. So, if and when you are going to be using your musical intellect, you would want to be using it in a way where it's essentially helping you calibrate back to your natural, confident musical flow state, where you could genuinely create music that is authentically aligned with your actual skill level and personal style. And this is interesting because when you create in this genuine way, you realize that you really don't always need to have all the skills in order to play something that truly sounds good. Now, without a lot of practice, it could still definitely be hard to consistently reach this sort of state that I'm describing to your level of satisfaction, but your intellect can still help you out a lot. The implications that come out of this idea are huge in my opinion, and I'm not going to ramble too much about it here, but depending on the situation, your intellectual thought might guide you towards making many different kinds of smart choices or, adjustments in what you're doing. So what I will do is maybe just list a couple of examples of possible thoughts that may come up when you're playing that you may want to act upon. So first, maybe you're playing the melody of a tune and in the moment you become aware of the dynamics and maybe you realize something is off, so you shift your focus to that and you adjust what you're doing dynamically so that it makes sense and fits in with the rest of the band. Another thing may be, let's say somebody else is playing the melody and maybe someone is comping as well, and in the moment you're just listening to the actual melody and if there's any spaces being left and just the specifics of everything, and you may choose to fill up that space, if it's appropriate, and if you fill it up, what you might play might relate to the actual melody and you're kind of playing off of that. Another example that has a world of possibilities of things you might become aware of is when you're comping. And, if you saw my video, at least part 5 on how to comp, I think it was episode 30, the majority of things that I talked about in that video could be examples of what I'm talking about here, where you could become aware of any one of those different things and basically your intellect adjusts accordingly to what's going on if it needs to. Essentially what's going on, and this is definitely not something that you need to overthink, but in a way you're kind of momentarily getting out of your empty head space and quickly focusing in on something specific so that you're able to make some sort of adjustment or improvement in a certain variable at the moment. Another thing may be that, when you're soloing, you might become aware of the fact that you don't think you're accurately making or conveying the changes in time. So, therefore, you might shift your focus into intentionally trying to do something like the chord tones and half notes exercise just to help you solidify your harmonic and rhythmic foundation. You may become aware that there might be something off with your time feel in the moment or lack thereof, and so you may focus on something that's time related to fix it. Another huge area that this kind of thing can apply to is my technique or physical mechanics and my touch on the instrument. I'm definitely not perfect, and oftentimes my human error can cause me to compromise, what is good technique or whatever for me personally, like what works for me. So the more experience I get with this, the easier it is for me to quickly notice when something like that is going on and then quickly make an adjustment so that my technique is better. So I hope that you could understand this mindset of having your thoughts regarding what you might actually focus on in the moment being influenced and connected to what's going on in the present moment. And also, with all that said, you don't need to overthink the non-thinking. At the end of the day, Just try to go and have some fun when you play. And finally, there's one other thing that I'm thinking about when I'm playing, and you may already know what it is.
Swinging and playing the blues. That's what we about.
Alright, so I'm just going to leave it there today. I hope you enjoyed that. If anyone has any comments or questions, put it in the comments. I'm here to help. And in the next episode,
hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey,
you're just going to have to wait and see this time. Alright, so that's it. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a like and consider becoming a subscriber as well as a contributor to Patreon, where you get all the PDFs on this channel for only $5 a month. And if you think anyone else would enjoy this content, please share it with them as well. And I will see you guys in episode 50.
Swinging and playing the blues. That's what we about.
I try to help you.